There's one more topic I'd like to discuss. We talked earlier about some of the ideological factors that make a culture better or worse at achieving and conveying knowledge. And we said that one needs to take these into account when evaluating fields and individual experts. These factors include the extent to which a rational methodology is known in practice, both in general and within each field, and the prevalence of various sorts of biases, and more generally, the extent to which the culture is truth-loving, is objective. But there is a second type of factor that stands in a reciprocal relationship to a society's ideology. It's politics, the extent to which people are free, or else subject to force. Not only is rationality and objectivity what leads people to value freedom, freedom is needed for thinking, and is needed for a functional division of intellectual labor. So the more coercive a society, or the more coercive any field within a society, the less functional it will be epistemologically. The less the mainstream will function, the less it'll be possible to determine who is and who isn't an expert. And in the end, the less it'll be possible for you to know if you live within that society. This is especially a problem when experts are promoted or installed by governmental force. Here I recommend Ayn Rand's essay, The Establishing of an Establishment, in which she talks about how government grants for the sciences entrench whatever ideas are currently popular, insulating them from criticism and revision. To the extent that such force is present, dissenting schools of thought that could otherwise have been part of the intellectual mainstream are relegated to the status of alternative sciences, with all the epistemic challenges that poses, both to the experts within those schools and to lay people who are trying to figure out the truth. Matters are made even worse when this scientific establishment is given coercive power over people's decisions. We can see this, for example, in medicine. Because of government licensing of doctors and the control of drugs by the FDA and DEA, doctors and scientists do not function as experts advising us on what procedures and drugs will benefit us. They instead function as authorities in charge of doling out to us the health care that they deem best. Before you accept a doctor's opinion on whether a certain drug would benefit you, you can ask him all the questions we discussed previously. But, of course, in many cases this whole process of thought is negated because you are forcibly prohibited from getting the drug without a permission slip from the doctor. And in any case, no individual doctor is free to recommend and prescribe whichever treatment he judges best, based on his own understanding of the state of knowledge. Instead, he has to abide by the edicts of the doctors, scientists, and bureaucrats at the regulatory agencies. They don't need to convince him, and he doesn't need to convince you, because they can simply prohibit him from acting against whichever policy they prefer, and he can prohibit you from taking the drug if it's one that his superiors let him have. And in this system, there's no ability to use the thinking we've been talking about to the extent that there's force limiting it. And it's not worth it. Nobody can afford to do it. So the imposition of force negates and paralyzes everybody's thinking. In such a system, to the extent to which it is even possible to honestly discuss ideas and convince one another is eroded. Everyone has myriad conflicts of interest and cause for distrust. If those wielding authority present objective evidence to those over whom they wield it, and if they answer their questions in the way I said earlier that experts need to, they're doing it out of charity rather than out of respect. Since the ruled over are prevented from making decisions for themselves, their ability and incentive to think about the relevant issues objectively just atrophies. They become increasingly dependent on the authorities, and the authorities become increasingly contemptuous of them. And this happens with every relationship within the domain where force is applied. So every transaction in the marketplace of ideas is corrupted, and each corrupted transaction eliminates opportunities for genuine knowledge. As a result, everyone, from the most erudite expert to the simplest layman, is able to know far less than he would be able to in a free society. The frontiers of knowledge are constricted.